And good morning and Shabbat Shalom, uh, glorious morning, and a glorious end to slavery because we have left Egypt. Isn't that great? Because we have left Egypt. We have Parasha Beshalach today, and Beshalach means when he sent, as in when we get into chapter 13 of Exodus, we will see Pharaoh sent out, and we'll get into that. But before we do that, we're going to uh, say the blessing before we study Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Lord our God, sweeten the words of Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our offspring and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us, know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Lord, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who selected us from all the peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah. And just as manna tasted sweet, so we are going to taste of some sweet Torah today. So now more than ever, we have to remember, because we were slaves in Egypt, we were slaves to that Egyptian happening. Remember, we talked about this in the past, where in a twofold thing, Pharaoh was basically trying to eliminate the Jewish people, and then what he wanted to keep, he wanted to assimilate. And we see this happening in cycles. We've talked about this before over the years, happening again. 6 million Jews lost in the Holocaust. Um, that's like trying to do complete genocide. And then they did experiments on people. We won't get in too deep into that, but just the point is that we, more than ever, we need to remember that we can't have those kind of things happen. That's why we say Zakor, remember. That's why we were very involved with a lot of the Holocaust things, remembrance, and partaking in those different things, working with the Holocaust Center, and spreading books about Holocaust victims so people can remember and know these things and what's going on, because we don't ever want these things to happen again. But now we're free from Egypt, and we are on our way into the wilderness, but we're not going directly to Israel as some would think. It's like, hey, that's just right up there. Let's just head north. Um, and so you have, and move on to my next thing here. And excuse me. Let's go to the word. Chapter 13, starting with verse number 17. I hope you read throughout this week, and then you read the half Torah portions, and then you saw some of the stuff from the Gospels that I shared, linking with some of this, and you see all the pictures and the different things that is happening. And so today we'll share some more with you and dig into verse number 17, chapter 13. It happened when Pharaoh sent out the people that God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, because it was near. For God said, perhaps the people will reconsider when they see a war, and they will return to Egypt. So God turned the people toward the way of the wilderness, to the Sea of the Reeds. Now, there's a lot of discussion on this, and we can basically see that uh, God had a design. God has a plan, and he always sees his plans through. And the biggest part of the plan was, we know that they're going to be pursued, and that God's going to take care of Egypt for Israel's sake. Now, in verse number 19, it says, let's see here, going back to the children of Israel were armed when they went up from Egypt. There's some interesting commentary that it says that they were armed, and what were they armed with? And there was Basically, they were armed with spiritual weapons. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because we read later on in some of the writings about being uh, our weapons are not carnal, but they're spiritual. And so we have these weapons that we can use in the spiritual through prayer that help us, and God is with us when we do those things. Now, verse number 19, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had firmly assured the children of Israel, saying, God will surely remember you, and you shall bring up my bones from here with you. Now, you remember in previous parashas or parashot, that Moses had, when he was talking with Pharaoh, he said, let the people go for a 3-day journey out to sacrifice to the Lord. And remember, Pharaoh, they said Pharaoh did not want them to go far, but far enough that the Egyptians would not see them sacrificing their deity. Remember, we talked about one of their deities, one of their main deities was lambs. Then Moses took the bones with him, as we read here in Exodus 13. For Joseph had assured, right? And so what made Pharaoh think that they weren't coming back? Well, it was because the bones of Joseph were gone. And again, if we look at Joseph and we compare him to being a picture of the Messiah, we can also see that how do we know that the Messiah lives is because the bones of Joseph are no longer in the tomb. So he's no longer in the tomb. So after 3 days, so here you see another wondrous picture of our Messiah through the Torah. Verse 20. They journeyed from Sukkot and encamped at Etham at the edge of the wilderness. The Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them on the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light. This must have been fantastic, so that they could travel day and night. He did not remove the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night from before the people. And the Lord spoke, chapter 14. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and let them turn back and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea, before Baal-zephon. You shall encamp opposite by the sea. Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are imprisoned in the land. The wilderness has locked them in. I shall strengthen the heart of Pharaoh, and he will pursue them. And I will be glorified through Pharaoh and his entire army. And Egypt will know that I am the Lord. And so they did. Again, this is all part of the plan of God to take care of Israel and to take care of Egypt, if you know what I mean. Verse number 5, it was told to the king of Egypt that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants became transformed regarding the people. And they said, what is this that we have done, that we have sent away Israel from serving us? He harnessed his chariot and attracted his people with him. He took 600 elite chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with officers on them all. And the Lord strengthened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the children of Israel. And the children of Israel were going out with an upraised arm. Remember, God has saved them with an outstretched arm. Verse number 9. Egypt pursued them and overtook them, encamped by the sea, and the horses and the chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and the army by Pi-hahiroth before Baal-zephon. The Pharaoh approached, the children of Israel raised their eyes, and behold, Egypt was journeying after them, and they were very frightened. The children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Now, remember, they see this huge army coming after them, and they've also just gone through one miracle after another, seeing all these plagues rain down upon Egypt. And you would sit there and think in your mind, what is it that we have to fear? But unless you're in that moment, and you probably have been at some point in your life where you're thinking, how could they even think like that? Well, we probably have thought like that, because in the moment there's the fear, and it clutches you and gets a hold of you. But the important thing is to cry out to God.
That's right.
They said to Moses in verse number 11, "Were there no graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the wilderness?" Isn't that interesting? Um, if you've ever led a group of people, a congregation, or anything, you may deal with some of these kind of things every once in a while. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I'll just tell you that I don't want to dwell too long on this, but you've got people that they want to instruct leadership, but yet they don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? They it's this critical nature. And again, we all fall into this. We can very easily fall, and I have, I can get critical of, say doctors, and get critical of certain things, but I, I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
And so people that have not been in leadership and get critical of leadership, they do not know what a leader goes through on a daily basis in taking care of people. And can you imagine, now this is a very large crowd of people.
Right.
And as we read later on, Moses talks to God. He says, I think these people are going to stone me.
Right.
Is it not the statement that we made to you in Egypt, saying, let us be, and we will serve Egypt? For it is better that we should serve Egypt than we should die in the wilderness. Moses said to the people, do not fear, stand fast and see the salvation of the Lord, that he will perform for you today. As you have seen Egypt today, you shall not see them ever again. The Lord shall make war for you, and you shall remain silent. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? And that's kind of interesting. It's kind of puzzling as to why he says this. It's because Moses, you could basically say, maybe he kind of felt this same fear.
Sure.
And so he was kind of praying this. So, I mean, he may have even been in a lengthy prayer. And God's finally saying, why are you doing this? Let's just take care of business. And he says, speak to the children of Israel and let them journey forth. He's telling them, go forward.
Right.
There's times when things happen to us and we feel like we're stuck and we can't go anywhere.
Right.
It's kind of like whenever change happens in our life. And I've told the story many times, like take for instance, you're out on an oil platform out in the Gulf of Mexico, and the oil platform catches fire. If you stay on the oil platform, you will surely die. Right. But if you jump into the waters, you may die there too, but you have a better chance. But here's what we're thinking here now is that you actually have God on your side. So he's going to save you because he said he's going to. He's going to bring you out. He's going to protect you. He's going to take care of you. So move forward. Jump in the water. Go. Mm-hmm. There's a midrash that talks about one of the tribes of the tribe of Judah, the tribe of praise. His name is Nachshon, and it says that when they were told to move forward, that he went forward, and he went ahead and just got right into the water, believing that the Lord is going to take care of this. The Lord is going to deliver them, and that he went all the way in up to his nostrils before the water started to move. That is faith. That is trust. That is bitachon. Remember, we talked about bitachon, trust in the Lord. So he was certain that the Lord was going to help. And I just love these midrashic stories that you find. And verse number 16, and you lift up your staff and stretch out your arm over the sea and split it. And the children of Israel shall come into the midst of the sea on dry land. And behold, I shall strengthen the heart of Pharaoh, and they will come after them, and I will be glorified through Pharaoh and his entire army, through his chariots and through his horsemen. Yes, some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we will trust in our Lord. Bitachon, right? And verse number 18. Egypt will know that I am the Lord when I am glorified through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. So he says it again. So this is important. We have to understand a lot of times when things are repeated throughout. I forgot to mention something about the bones of Joseph. So when I was searching around, um, um, I found some interesting things about the bones of Joseph because, and we can talk a little bit more about it later on, but the bones of Joseph were actually carried around with them in the wilderness. Uh, Remember, they're taking them on with them to the promised land. So they're carrying. So later on, we see that they're carrying the ark of the covenant, and they're carrying the bones of Joseph. And I read something here in Baba Batra 14a. It says, uh, who writes that in fact that the broken tablets were placed in a different ark, the one which traveled at the front of the Jews in the desert, which they took with them into battle. So I want you to keep that in mind. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later as we come up to those things, to those portions of scripture. And I just thought that was interesting. But there's one more thing that I found in the Midrash Tanchuma on Beshalach. And it says, Moses bore Joseph's bones out of Egypt, though there was no one in all the world as important as he, since he was a king, as it is said, and there was a king in Jerusalem, Deuteronomy 33:5, or a king in Yeshurun. Moses merited that the Shekinah itself should be concerned about him. Hence it is said in later on, he buried him in the valley. What is more, not only did Pharaoh's servants, the elders of his house and the elders of his land of Egypt, escort Jacob, but Joseph's coffin was escorted by the Shekinah, the ark, the priests, the Levites, and the clouds of glory. Furthermore, as Joseph's coffin was borne alongside the ark of the Eternal One through the desert, the nations would inquire of Israel, what are these two arks? And the Israelites would reply, the one is the ark of the one who died, and the other is the ark of the living one of the world. It is customary to carry the ark of a dead person alongside of the ark of the eternal, the living one of the world. Oh, they ask, is it customary to carry the ark of a dead person alongside the ark of the eternal, living one of the world? And they would ask, and the Israelites would respond, the deceased lying within this ark fulfilled all that is written in the other
Wow.
ark.
Wow.
I'm telling you, you can't make this stuff up. This is in first and second century writing. Here you have again the picture of Joseph, his bones, and he's a picture of Messiah, saying that he has fulfilled everything. So remember, when we read about later on, as the master says, think of that, I've not come to do away with law, but I've come to fulfill it.
Yes. Very
awesome.
Good. Very good.
That is just awesome. I just love it. I'm glad I went back to that. Almost forgot about it. Just make sure we don't make sure we don't miss anything else. Okay, we're good right there. Now let's see here. Verse number 19, the angel of God. Remember now, wherever we read the angel of God, we have to remember that that is a manifestation of God himself. God manifests himself in many forms. And he did throughout the Bible often as an angel. Forgive me, I think anyway, I'm going to speak health into existence. I'm becoming healthier. The angel of God who had been going in front of the camp of Israel moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and went behind them. So when you read some of these things, you're kind of like, and remember the angel of God, it's Messiah. Remember, Messiah, salvation. God is our Savior. He's the angel of God. All these things connect to each other. So he's going around to the rear to protect them. And the cloud. Well, the cloud is also like the essence of God, like the Shekinah. And so what may seem like something that's separate is just going to show you that God is everywhere and can do everything all at once. We can't do things like that. This is what
Right.
baffles people when they're like, well, didn't Yeshua praying to himself? Was he praying to himself? You have to understand, God can constrict himself into a small place, just like we talked about. He put himself into a burning bush, yet he is still God throughout all of
That's
the
right.
universe.
That's good.
This is not hard to understand. Um, and he went behind them, verse 20, and it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, and there were cloud and darkness while it illuminated the night, and one did not draw near the other all night. So God moved around to the rear and he protected them and kept Egypt from being able to get a hold of them. There's midrashic stories that they fired arrows and stuff into there, and then the cloud just absorbed them, and then they were protected. But one of the things that amazes you about that is that because God hardened Pharaoh's heart, basically, basically that hardened heart comes from what? It comes from a delusion that whatever it is that they're doing at the time, that is the right thing to do. We're going to do this. And that's why when you read these things, it's like, how could this be possible? Why would he even do this? Seeing these great things, why would he continue to attack? It's delusion.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just it's just amazing. Verse 21. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord moved the sea with a strong east wind all the night. And he turned the sea to damp land, and the water split. And the children of Israel came within the sea on dry land, and the water was a wall for them on their right and on their left.
Amazing.
Egypt pursued and came after them, every horse of Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen, into the midst of the sea. It happened at the morning watch that the Lord looked down at the camp of Egypt with a pillar of fire and cloud, and he confounded the camp of Egypt. Now, when I read this, it made me kind of wonder. We read later on in Paul's writings when he's talking to the Corinthians about he's talking about prophecy and tongues and things like that, and then he uses the words, but God is not the author of confusion. So here we read something about God confounding them,
Right.
but yet Paul writes that he's not the author of confusion. Now remember, the scripture does not contradict each other.
That's right.
So makes me wonder, what is Paul really talking about right here? And anybody that's watched this or watching this and they have any insights, I'd love to know. I really would.
Have a discussion.
I'd love to have a discussion about it. Um, he removed the wheels of their chariots and caused them to drive with difficulty. Egypt said, I shall flee before Israel, for the Lord is waging war against them for Egypt, or for them against Egypt. So now all of a sudden, it's like the delusion is gone and they're realizing we're about to die.
Yeah.
And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, and the water will go back upon Egypt, upon its chariots, upon its horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and toward morning the water went back to its power as the Egyptians were fleeing toward it. And the Lord churned Egypt in the midst of the sea. And the water came back and covered the chariots and the horsemen of the entire army of Pharaoh who were coming behind them in the sea. There remained not one of them. The children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea, till the water was a wall for them on their right and on their left. Here's where their salvation came.
Yeah.
This goes to show you that, dare I say this, but many people, they ask, do I have to go through the mikveh? Do I have to be baptized? Well, you could stay on the other side of the Red Sea if you want. You could stay right there in the middle of it. You've been redeemed from Egypt. Are you going to stop in the middle of the sea and let Egypt overtake you? Are you going to not even go across and just, when he comes and says, hey, I want to go back to Egypt with you? No. It's essential. The pattern is there.
Right.
The pattern is there. Yes, you have to be mikvah. You have to be baptized. That's the salvation.
That's right.
On that day, the Lord saved Israel. He saved them
That's right.
from the hand of Egypt. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Yeah, they washed up onto the shore. And Israel saw the great hand of the Lord inflicted upon Egypt. And the people revered the Lord, and they had faith in the Lord and in Moses, his servant. So now they're feeling great. This is great. As a matter of fact, one midrash talks about how they went, and the bodies that washed up on the shore, they went and started picking the gold off of those bodies.
Wow.
And so, but you have to understand something. They had already left out of Egypt with great wealth.
Right.
And when we read further on, Moses tells them, hey, we got to get moving here. And it's kind of like, how do you know when you have enough?
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you're satisfied with what the Lord has given you. As when we talk about Rockefeller, he says, how much money is enough? Just one more dollar,
Right.
But at a point, they felt like, okay, we're blessed by God. Let's go. Chapter 15. Then Moses and the children of Israel chose to sing the song of the Lord, and they said the following. Now, I'm not going to sing this song for you. We're not going to read it, but I am going to. This is known as Miriam's song, and later on, when you get a little bit further into the verses after you're reading about their singing, and we get to the 20th verse, and it says, Miriam the prophetess took the tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dances. And Miriam called to them, sing to God. Now, we usually don't sing when we're frightened.
Right.
Excuse me. Whenever we are depressed, or we're in a state of despair, it's not easy to find a song. When I wake up in the morning, when I'm real sleepy, no, that's not a time for singing. If I eat too much, and a really heavy meal, no, I'm not going to run out and exercise either. But we are singing. We sing when our hearts are, there's so many love songs nowadays. People, they love and they sing about them. And so when we're truly in love with God, when we're really longing after God, we sing a song to him. And we sing because we're looking for better times. We're looking for achievement in our lives. We're looking for, as we're looking here, and then when we're searching the scripture, we're looking for more revelation. We also don't sing, here it comes, when we become complacent.
Right, that's true.
You have to be careful.
That's good. Very good.
When we are striving, when we are wanting something, that's when a song starts coming to us. Sure. So when we taste joy, it's like you sing those songs and you start getting some joy, and the next thing you know, you're just kind of like, Lord, take us to heaven now.
Right.
Let's go. It's that joy. It's that joy that you're experiencing. Song is prayer. It's prayer. You're praying to God. You're lifting. There's something about when you lift your arms to God that it does something for you. It helps you. So, and when we are in those state of despair and whatever it happens, when we do start turning our mind around and we get towards striving for God, for something for God, that is when we can start singing a song. And there's nothing better than when redemption comes in our life.
Right.
The redemption happens, and And we want to sing.
Right.
There's 10 songs throughout the Bible, and there's the song at the sea. Then later on, there's the song at the well in Numbers chapter 21. Then in Deuteronomy 32, there's a song after completion of the writing of the Torah. And then in Joshua 10, there's a song that they sang after the sun was stopped. You remember that story?
Mhm.
Then there's Deborah's song in Judges chapter 5. Then there's King David's song in 2 Samuel chapter 22. It's the song of the dedication of the Holy Temple. There's also the song of the dedication of the Holy Temple in Psalms 30. And then there's King Solomon's Song of Songs. And that talks about it's singing the song of the love between the divine groom and his bride Israel. So this we're going to have a 10th song. I listed 9, but there's going to be a 10th song, and that is called the Shir Kadash, or the new song. Sing unto the Lord a new song. Yes, we're going to sing a new song. The song of redemption, the song that will talk about how all the suffering is gone, how we'll no longer be ignorant of anything. Things like jealousy and hatred, they'll all be gone, and the joy will come in our life, and we will sing a new song.
Yes.
That's really what it's talking about, singing unto the Lord a new song.
That's good.
All right. Moving on. Verse number 22 of chapter 15. Excuse me. Moses caused Israel to journey from the Sea of Reeds, and they went out to the wilderness of Shur. They went for a 3-day period in the wilderness, but they did not find water. They came to Marah, but they did not drink the waters of Marah because they were bitter. Excuse me. I don't know if it's all the talking I'm doing. Like that one, the Abbott and Costello routine we used to see all the time. The salesman, he's talking and talking and talking, and the other guy tries to interrupt, and he says, hey, I'm trying to say something here. And he says, oh, okay, I'll let you talk a while. I mean, he's already been talking forever. I'd let you talk a while, but you'd have to put it in the comments, and I'll read them. But here, I find something interesting here is they came to Marah, but they could not drink the waters of Marah because they were bitter. Who was bitter? The waters were bitter, or were the people bitter?
Right.
Kind of interesting phrasing there, isn't it?
I assume it's the water.
Therefore, they called its name Marah. So you have this, people, it can happen. People become bitter.
Yeah.
And the people complained in verse 24 against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? He cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There he established for the nation a decree and an ordinance, and there he tested it. He said, if you hearken diligently to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is just in his eyes, give ear to his commandments, and observe all his decrees, then any of the diseases that I placed in Egypt I will not bring upon you, for I am the Lord your healer. Oh, Baruch atah Adonai Rophe HaKolim. Blessed are you, Lord, healer of the sick. I pray that every morning. Every morning. They arrived at Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms. They encamped there by the water. So now all of a sudden they journeyed just a little bit farther, and there's an abundance of water. It's all over the place. You just love it. Chapter 16. They journeyed from Elam, and the entire assembly of the children of Israel arrived at the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and excuse me, Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month from their departure from the land of Egypt. The entire assembly of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The children of Israel said to them, "If only we had died," here it goes again, "if only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, as we sat by the pot of meat when we ate bread to satiety. For you have taken us out of the wilderness to kill this entire congregation by famine." Excuse me. And the Lord said to Moses, "Behold," again, you know, where you're sitting there, how can this happen? How can these people complain?
Right.
But we have to remember, we all fall into this.
Yes, absolutely.
We all fall into this. The Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I shall rain down for you food from heaven. Let the people go out and pick each day's portion on its day, so that I can test them." Interesting. Lord's going to feed them, but he's also going to give them a test. Pop quiz. All right. Whether they will follow my teaching or not. And it shall be that on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring, it will be double what they pick every day. Moses and Aaron said to the children of Israel, "In the evening you shall know that the Lord took you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, and he has heard your complaints against the Lord. For what are we that you should incite complaints against us?" And Moses said, "When in the evening the Lord gives you meat to eat and bread to satiety in the morning, as the Lord hears your complaints that you complain against him, for what are we? Not against us are your complaints, but against the Lord."
Right.
Remember, this is one of those things I had to tell people. You know, it's like, many people, they take it to heart when they're in leadership, that it's not against them. They're going, it's against God.
That's right.
We're just messengers. You know, that reminds me of something. This portion is called Beshalach. Shalach is similar to Shaliach or Shalia, which is basically means sent out ones.
Right.
You know, he sent out ones. So, and Shalia is a emissary or a messenger. So here now we are brought out of Egypt to be emissaries,
That's right.
to be messengers for God.
That's good.
Verse number 9, Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the entire assembly of the children of Israel, approach the presence of the Lord, for he has heard your complaints." When Aaron spoke to the entire assembly of the children of Israel, they turned to the wilderness. Behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. So the cloud came near to them. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, in the afternoon you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be sated with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God." It was toward the evening that the quail ascended and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. The layer of dew ascended, and behold, upon the surface of the wilderness was something thin exposed, thin as frost on the earth. The children of Israel saw and said to one another, "It is food," for they did not know what it was. Manna simply means, what is it? "This is the thing that the Lord has commanded. Gather from it for every man according to what he eats, an omer per person, according to the number of your people, everyone according to whoever in his tent you shall take." And they did it. And it didn't matter if they didn't take enough for themselves, it was enough. And it didn't matter if they took a little too much, it was still enough. It still was whatever was for their purpose. And Moses said in verse number 19, "No man may leave over from it until morning." But they did not obey Moses, and people left over from it until morning, and they became infested with worms, and it stank. And Moses became angry with them. They gathered it morning by morning, every man according to what he eats, and when the sun grew hot, it melted.
Mhm.
Now, God is testing them and in preparation for the Sabbath so that they understand why they're doing this and why it's important. It happened on the sixth day that they gathered a double portion of food,
Right.
2 omers for each, and all the princes of the assembly came and told Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord has spoken. Tomorrow is a rest day, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you wish to bake and cook what you wish to cook, and whatever is left over, put away for yourselves as a safekeeping until the morning." See, now they couldn't do that before, but now they're allowed to do this. They
Interesting.
put it away until morning, as Moses had commanded. It did not stink, and there was no infestation in it. Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath for the Lord. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days shall you gather it, but the seventh day is a Sabbath. On it there will be none." It happened on the seventh day that some of the people went out to gather, and they did not find. So again,
Yep.
they weren't listening, or they just didn't understand. Some people just don't know what they don't know. They're just so caught up in their own selves and what's going on. The me. That I don't want to get started on that. Me. Verse 31. The house of Israel called it manna. It was like coriander seed. It was white, and it tasted like a cake fried in honey. Mmm.
Yeah.
And some midrash says that it tasted whatever they wanted it to taste like.
Interesting. Marble wall.
Moses said, "This is the thing that the Lord has commanded. A full omer of it shall be a safekeeping for your generations, so that you will see the food with which I fed you in the wilderness when I took you out of Egypt." Moses said to Aaron, "Take 1 jar and put a full omer of manna into it. Place it before the Lord for a safekeeping for your generations. As the Lord has commanded Moses, Aaron placed it before the ark of the testimony for a safekeeping." So that's talking about later on. So they put it in a jar, and then later on, it ended up going in to the ark of the testimony, along with Aaron's rod that budded, the 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 Torah, and the broken tablets.
Right.
Um, the children of Israel ate manna for 40 years until their arrival in the inhabited land. They ate manna until their arrival at the border of the land of Canaan. The omer is a tenth of an ephah. So this is what they ate
Right.
the whole time. Chapter 17. We're running out of time. The entire assembly of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin to their journeys according to the word of Hashem. Excuse me. They encamped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. The people contended with Moses, and they said, "Give us water that we may drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you contend with me? Why do you test the Lord?" The people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses, and it said, Why is this? Why is this that you have brought us from Egypt to kill me and my children and my livestock through thirst?" Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "What shall I do for this people? A bit more, and they will stone me." Just like I was saying earlier. Now, these people are getting upset. And the Lord said to Moses, "Pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and in your hand take your staff, which you with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I shall stand before you by the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water will come forth from it, and the people will drink." This is the same rock that Paul talks about later on, the rock that followed them in the desert. Yes, yes, I do believe that this rock that was Messiah, that was God providing for his people, I do believe that it followed them around in the desert and provided water for them when they needed it.
Absolutely.
Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah Meribah because of the contention of the children of Israel and because of their test of the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Now, Amalek, did you know Amalek? Do you know that word means doubt? So right off the bat, we've got a lot of complaining going on and everything, and a lot of hardships coming toward them, and they're not handling it very well. And all of a sudden they're attacked by doubt. Isn't that just like it? We come out of Egypt, and one of the things that happens to us is that we have doubt,
Sure.
and that's a tough thing to face.
Yeah.
And verse number 9 says, Moses said to Joshua, choose people for us and go to battle with Amalek. Tomorrow we'll stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. Joshua did as Moses said to him, to do battle with Amalek, to do battle with doubt. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur ascended to the top of the hill. It happened that when Moses raised his hand, Israel was stronger. And when he lowered his hand, Amalek was stronger. Moses' hands grew heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and they sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands.
Like you said.
Now, here's what's interesting about this, and I'm going to finish with this, is that we have this is an amazing story.
Right.
And what we have to understand is that in our world today, we have this mindset that all we have to do is believe.
Right.
But this word right here that we're reading here about him supporting his hands, and that they were steadfast in supporting his hands, is, yes, God is faithful to us, but in the same instance, we have to be faithful to him.
That's right.
So that steadfast, that word emunah in Hebrew is the word for faith. It's an action word.
That's right.
We have to, God doesn't need our support,
Right.
but we are faithful in supporting God's mission.
Right.
To do things, and when we support someone else, when we lift up somebody else, when we help somebody else, we are doing that for God.
That's beautiful.
It's and the rabbis will tell you, it's as if you have helped God.
That's right.
And that's what I want to leave you here with today, is let your faith, let your emunah, let it help others.
That's right.
Put it to action. May the Lord bless you and keep you.
Yes.
May the Lord make his face to shine upon you.
Yes.
And the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Praise God.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Very good teaching.